Hi, Virtue here. I want to talk about my experience with Broomfield House in Broomfield Park in North London. Um, for those of you who don't know me, I actually work with the dead, among other things. I also paint. The three images you're going to see here is the original condition of Broomfield House. The next image is going to be what's left of Broomfield House because it burnt down twice. I think it was in the 80s or 90s, and there's plans hopefully to rebuild it, although they haven't got around to it yet. And you're going to see a painting of the three entities that inhabit the house. This is a really interesting one, this haunting. I do a lot of hauntings around London. I sort of work with some fairly difficult ones, nasty ones, ones that make me cry when I get home, all sorts of things. It's just madness. The UK and London are so haunted, it's insane. And ever since I moved here 4 years ago, I've just been having to deal with the dead continually, which is okay. It's all under control now. This was something that happened to me a couple of years ago. I walk in Broomfield Park because I sort of live not too far away, and I take exercise there. It's a beautiful park, and I'd always been quite upset to see the condition of Broomfield House because it was built in the late 1500s. It's proper old. It's such a shame to see it in the condition it's in. And I think all the residents, all the locals, are pretty upset about it being so destroyed. Anyway, I was walking in the park one day and I felt an entity, a young girl. I could see her in my mind's eye. She gave me a really sort of strong impression. And she was fairly young. I think she was probably really about 8 or 9. But she seemed to be some sort of like servant. She had these really nondescript sort of, like they were probably once white and they were grey now. And they were sort of too big for her. But she came running up behind me and she was really abrupt. She just said they want their house fixed. And of course I'm walking along and I could still feel her hovering there, or, sort of behind me, her presence behind me. And I sort of had to think, what? And then I thought, okay, she must be talking about Broomfield House because it's the only thing that makes any sense. So I said Broomfield House and she said, yeah, can you help? And I said, well, I guess I can try. I said, sure. And then she just disappeared. That was it. I thought, okay, that's a bit weird. So I just kept doing what I was walking and didn't think too much about it. But I sort of thought, I guess I could do a painting because that's what I'd been doing. I'd been painting these hauntings that I'd been sort of wandering into and having to deal with. So I thought, well, I suppose I could do this one. Maybe it might be some sort of help to, show the plight of Broomfield House. Who knows? Anyway, I didn't get around to it for a while because I had a couple of other projects I was finishing, so I needed to do them. And about a month later, I actually painted the painting. And the next time after that, I went for a walk through the park. I actually go past the remains of Broomfield House when I walk. And I could feel the three entities that I painted out the front. I could feel their presence. So, of course, I'm used to it. Like the flats I live in, I have two entities that live in here. They come back and forth. They're not here all the time. But, I see the father often downstairs. He hovers around the common area downstairs. And if I see him, I will sort of say hi in my, if I could say it aloud, I will. But if otherwise, I just say it in my head. So I always acknowledge him if he's around. And I did the same to them because they were out the front and I sort of acknowledged them and as I walked past. And I got the weirdest reaction. As you can see by the painting, the patriarch, which is the one, the single image, all he did to acknowledge me was he just, I could feel it. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. He just gave me this sort of slight nod. Like it was barely a nod, it was just this slight nod. But it gave me this feeling, this really feeling of warmth and gratitude. And it was friendly, but it was so slight, but it was so friendly. And I sort of thought, that's a bit on the weird side. But I kept walking because I thought, well, you know, it is the dead, and the dead is fairly, can be, you know, I always like to liken it to the Wild West sometimes. It's a bit crazy. And I kept walking, but I couldn't get it out of my head because it was such a small gesture that I could feel, and yet the message was so big. And I just thought, that is really strange. So, as other people who have listened to the other clips probably realise, I have a lot of help, a lot of spiritual help because of having to undo a lot of these hauntings. And I actually asked them, I said, look, what was that? That was too strange. And the answer I got was, they can't talk to you. I said, what? What do you mean? They said they can't talk to you because you're a peasant. I just thought, oh, good, it's not getting any saner, is it really? This is just nuts. But I got it explained to me that because I was peasant class, they could never speak to me. I was then explained, I got it explained as well, that in the local area, where if I'd actually really been in that era, in the local area where I lived, that nod would have been something as really, really special. Because half the time you didn't even get that. You just got ignored. And I was astounded because I realised that for a very short split second, I actually felt what it was like to live, or the etiquette, or the responses of what it was like to live, because this would have been about early 1600s. And being Australian, we don't really have that much of a class system as well. That was also a real shock. Because I tell you, I can now testify that the power of just some little nod, it just shows how lowly you were. And I actually find it really mind-blowing. I still find it mind-blowing. You know, my 2015 brain just could not get my head around this. And yet it was such a warm gesture. And I just this haunting always makes me think, I feel quite lucky that I got to actually feel it, because it really was very powerful. And in a sense, once I understood what was going on, I actually did feel a little bit special, except when I'd walk past again, like at other times, I'd often think, should I cover myself in dirt and be perhaps carrying a bucket of slops? Because it was just, every time I walk past that house, I get the idea again, or it almost makes me feel or remember that sort of feeling of being so shocked that someone couldn't talk to me because I was of a peasant class. It's just, you know, it shows the history, because London ghosts do example actual history. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do in London is sort of, I mean, it's bloody Victorian, my God. I say it all the time, the Victorians and death. They're just insane, it really is. But most of it is still reasonably recent. So there's not really that huge social difference. I mean, there still would have been class back then for sure, but nothing compared to this. This was just the extremes of it, I think, is what I'm still trying to get my head around. But I do feel really fortunate. I feel like I time warped, and I feel like not many people could say that they understand what it feels like to be treated as a peasant because these people in the house were merchant traders, so they weren't landed gentry or any of that, but they were still highly respected in the community. But anyway, just another one of London's fascinating dead that just keep you on your toes. I don't quite understand, though, how, and I'm still trying to get my head around how the entities in the house can know that their house has been so destroyed, because that's something of modern times, and yet they're still behaving in a way of living in the 1600s. Maybe it's just their habits. Maybe they just expect it to be like that. But I don't know. As I said before, dealing with the dead and dealing with hauntings particularly it really is the Wild West, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And you also never know where they're going to take you or what the outcome's really ever going to be. You have to be very quick, and you have to be able to think on your feet. But anyway, this is an example of an actual reasonably pleasant and amazing haunting. I just wish there was a way we could all sort of feel that incredible resource, because it does feel like a resource. It's just a living few seconds of history from the dead world. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you again for listening, and there will be more of these of my tales with the dead, and I'll see you in another clip. Bye.